Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I have with me Kalavai Venkat, and do we have news or do we have news? Please like this video. A lot of breaking information just a few moments ago. We're going to share all that with you. Let's welcome Kalavai Venkat ji. Kalavai ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you?
Namaskar, 𝗏𝗍𝗍, and good morning, good evening to everyone. Nice to meet with all of you once again.
Thank you so much, Venkat ji. So, first of all, Trump has got an award, the Darwin Award. Talk to us a little bit about what this Darwin Award is, and then we'll go to the main topic, which is the tariffs. Over to you.
Right. He is the most deserving candidate for the Darwin Award, but he has not yet won it. Okay, I have nominated him. So, okay, I have right now nominated him, and I've also appealed to a lot of other friends to do the same and to propagate that on their podcast. Because, in my opinion, Trump is the person who is most deserving of the Darwin Award. Okay, all along, one of his obsessions has been to win the Nobel Prize for peace. That's what has been driving him on the suicidal trajectory for several months now. But I think he's aiming for something low. Okay, so Nobel Prize has been around for more than a century, and then too many people have won it, and that's not going to distinguish him. But I think he's in a much more august company of Darwin Award winners. Short while ago, I sent you a link. Do you want to just bring it up and share it? Right. And I'll, in the meantime, give the background of Darwin Award. So Darwin Award is a parody award, okay, that was, I think, created some 35 years ago. And every year, folks are nominated, very stupid people who have done the most suicidal things to remove themselves from the gene pool. Those are the individuals who are awarded the Darwin Award every year. And then on this page, if you look for the year 2018, you will find a person by name Alan Chow, okay, an American missionary. So, in fact, he got, that's the one you're seeing. He won the award for the missionary position, okay. So, he was an American missionary who wanted to go to the Sentinel Island, North Sentinel Island in Andaman, and convert those tribes to Christianity. So, he goes there, he shows up in a boat, and of course, nobody is allowed to go there. Indian government has banned anyone from approaching this island, because the Sentinelese are a very ancient tribe. Probably there are about 500 of them still left at the most. And they have been an isolate for 60,000 years. And if any outside person comes into contact with them, they will catch germs and other diseases and they will die. I mean, the Sentinelese people will die. That's why the government doesn't want anyone to go there. And then this moron, Alan Shaw, an American missionary, a Christian missionary in 2018, decides to go to Sentinelese Island and to convert the Sentinelese to Christianity. And of course, Jesus did not come to the help of Alan Chow. And as soon as he landed there, the Sentinelese fired bows and arrows at him and killed him. Okay, and then his body was not retrieved. And I do not know how he will be resurrected. Maybe Jesus will send a separate spaceship to the Sentinel Island to retrieve his body eventually when he has to be resurrected. So the Darwin Award is given to people who do the stupidest things and then either to destroy themselves or the idea they have been propagating or society. They can cause about the death and destruction of anything. And those are the people who deserve to be nominated for the Darwin Award. And that's why I have nominated Donald Trump for the Darwin Award of 2025. And I hope all of you will support that and he will eventually win the award. Then he'll be in the august company of the missionary Alan Chow and many other stupid people in the past. That's the background of the Darwin Award. It's a parody award. It's given to people who usually do the dumbest things to remove themselves from the gene pool and hence do a favor to humanity. In this case, I think Trump has done everything short of removing himself from the gene pool, the biological gene pool. However, I think he has done everything to make sure that he and his legacy are completely destroyed. And that's a good enough achievement to nominate him for the Darwin Award. That's the background of this award. And with that, back to you, 𝗏𝗍𝗍. Let's start with the tariff issue.
Thank you so much, Venkatji. So today morning, or I think maybe yesterday, there was an interview with Bloomberg by the Commerce Secretary, Lutnick. I think Howard Lutnick, if I remember correctly. This man lost his entire team in 9/11. He ran a company called Cantor Fitzgerald, and they were in 102nd floor, if I remember correct, on the World Trade Center. And he escaped because it was the first day of school for his son, and he got delayed, dropping off his son at his school, and therefore by the time he arrived at the World Trade Center, it had already caught fire, and there's a big history behind it. He had to relocate the entire company across the river to New Jersey, and they had to start over again. They had lost most of their employees. Cantor Fitzgerald, it's a bond securities firm, as far as I remember. I'm just recalling from memory, and now he finds himself as a commerce secretary. Otherwise, very, very shrewd, Lutnick or Besant, they all have somehow turned this whole thing, and they are weaponizing tariffs at India. And what I'm aghast is, what is the game plan here? I have some ideas on what the game plan could be, but in the short term, the NRIs in United States are going to feel the heat, my friend. You, me, everybody, and you just have to be careful and be safe. And this is also trying to influence the middle America. That see, always if you want to show a problem, you have to make a target first. Unfortunately, that target appears to be Indian Americans. One never thought that the Republicans would do it, and well, what are you going to do? Are you going to drive us back into the arms of Democrats, who are a different kind of a devil? We'll talk about all that later. Venkatji, I just want us to take a quick look at what Lutnick said, because in that there is a comment of Trump also about India and Russia. Let's take a quick look at that, and then I'll yield the floor to you.
Social media. It looks like we've lost India, and Russia for that matter, to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together. This relationship between the US and India has clearly soured. You yourself said earlier this year that India rubbed the US the wrong way. There's an understandable tension that continues to build, but they're not the only ones buying Russian energy. The Chinese are buying Russian energy, and for that matter, the Europeans too. And I think there's a sense from the Indian side, Mr. Secretary, that they feel singled out, perhaps unfairly. What's your comment, your message for them this morning?
Well, remember, before the Russian conflict, the Indians bought less than 2% of their oil from Russia. Less than 2%. And now they're buying 40% of their oil from Russia. What they're doing is, because the oil is sanctioned, it's really, really cheap because the Russians are trying to find people to buy it. And
I'm going to stop him right there, because I have to add something. When these sanctions were applied, there was a number that was determined by the EU. I think it was $60 a barrel. As long as you bought from Russia below that amount, then you were okay. In fact, the Biden administration encouraged India to buy crude from Russia, because they said that not doing that would escalate the price of crude across the world and would have an economic disaster. This is February 2022. And while he may be saying that it's gone from 2% to 40%, India has almost always had a basket of suppliers for crude. Everybody needs to bid for these contracts, and India will buy the lowest price of crude at its shores, not at the source, at its shores, whether it is Mumbai or any refinery that they arrive. So you have to quote the price. You have to figure in your insurance, your transport, everything. India is pretty clever in this, and it so happened that Russia was the lowest bidder, and I don't see why India should now be blamed when it was in fact US that was encouraging them to do this. I'm going to continue the video because there's some more things that he has said. Just watch it. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we continue with the video, let me make a few observations there. So number one, right? So yeah, 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗧𝗧 told in an interview, the former US ambassador to India and the Biden administration, he said that we wanted India to buy the oil to offset the global oil price, right? So that it doesn't, go out of control. However, that should not be our justification. India will buy, not only India, every nation on this planet should operate in the interest of its citizens and its people, and its own long-term well-being. So that being the case, energy consumption is most important for elevating a country, a society out of poverty, and to generate wealth, and to drive the future of the economy. So given all of these things, India should be able to import oil from anybody based on its strategic interests, and it does not owe any explanation to the Americans or to anyone else in the world. And this applies not only to India, but to every other country too. Because the duty of the prime minister or president of a country is to ensure the well-being of his or her citizens. That's number one. Then number two, this is not even about oil alone. I think this is about four different things, and I will talk about. But talking of oil, all of Europe has imported oil from India. And most importantly, Ukraine has imported 15% of its diesel last year from India. So if we had to go with the statements made by all of the lackeys of Trump, then who called this Modi's war, the Ukraine-Russia war, the Modi's war, then this would then mean this is Ukraine's war, because Ukraine bought 15% of the oil, and the money it paid eventually went back to the Russians, and who are waging war against Ukraine. That's the level of stupidity that Trump and his acolytes have all displayed, and that's why he's the fittest candidate for the Darwin Award. That's number one. However, before we jump into the rest of that, I think you wanted to show a little bit more of that video. Show that, but then
Yes.
after that, I'll jump into what is really driving this tariff war and how one should counter that. Go ahead.
Yes. So this is the latest update. The European Union's new restrictions on Russian crude have led to a massive surge in diesel shipments from India. Here's the pricing of crude moving forward. I think EU has put the limit at $47 per barrel. I think this is going to be effective in a few months from now for buying from Russia. If you want to buy from Russia, you need to stay below that in order for you to not get sanctioned. And I believe India got a 5% discount, and in the recently concluded meeting, they got a further $2.50 per barrel discount. So it effectively comes down to $42 per barrel. This is something that 𝗏𝗏𝗙𝗪𝗏 and I had mentioned about 10-15 days ago. So we were ahead of the curve there. And the interesting thing that still so far hasn't seen the light, but 𝗏𝗏𝗙𝗪𝗏 says that this transaction is going to be paid for by India in UAE dirhams. So this is also another thing that probably is not making US happy, because now India is not saying that I'll pay for it in rupees. I'm going to pay for it in UAE dirhams. So what happens is essentially the dollar is being shoved out of the petrol transaction. That energy is one of the biggest transactions. So Houston is not happy. So you're going to have all these things being hit at India from various angles. Now let's go back to the Lutnick interview, because there are more revelations in that. Let's take a look at that.
I've just decided, the heck with it. Let's buy it cheap and make a ton of money. But you know what? That is just plain wrong. It's ridiculous, and they either need to decide which side they want to be on. What's funny is, remember, the Chinese sell. We're always willing to talk. The Chinese sell to us. The Indians sell to us. They're not going to be able to sell to each other. We are the consumer of the world. People have to remember, it's our $30 trillion economy that is the consumer of the world. So eventually they all have to come back to the customer, because we all know eventually the customer is always right.
When you are talking with India, Mr. Secretary, I know a lot of companies in the U.S. have shifted manufacturing to India from China, so there's a real interest in this in terms of their costs. How much do you feel like you've lost leverage as a result of the court case that came out fairly recently?
We haven't lost anything with respect to the court case. If you look at the dissent, right, it was 7-4. Read the dissent. The current Chief Justice sided with President Trump. The former Chief Justice sided with President Trump, and the incoming Chief Justice sided with President Trump, and the smartest guy on the bench, which is well known who the smartest guy on the bench is, he sided with Donald Trump. So I think you are going to see the Supreme Court side with Donald Trump, and I don't think we've lost leverage. What we've lost is that India doesn't yet want to open their market, stop buying Russian oil, right? And stop being a part of BRICS, right? They're the vowel between Russia and China. If that's who you want to be, go be it. But either support the dollar, support the United States of America, support your biggest client, who is the American consumer, or I guess you're going to pay a 50% tariff, and let's see how long this lasts.
It seems like there's been a...
Okay, let's continue with this. Let's jump in, please. Jump in, please.
Yeah, a few comments. Number one, right? So let's start with the very first thing, set it aside. First of all, the war between Russia and Ukraine. Who's guilty of that? United States of America. It's America's war. It was started by Bill Clinton in the 90s, 30 years ago, when he expanded NATO west of Germany. Right after the unification of Germany, a promise was made that NATO will not spread further eastwards, but it spread. Then it was continued by Bush Jr. And then the worst culprit of all of them was Barack Obama, who in 2008, after he won, appointed Victoria Nuland. She is one of the most evil persons on the planet as Undersecretary in the State Department to not only destabilize Ukraine, and eventually in 2014 to overthrow an elected government only because it was more neutral and favorable to Russia, but also set up biolabs to manufacture germs in Ukraine. By various estimates, she set up more than 30 plus biochemical labs in Ukraine. This is number one. Then this war has been sustained by the United States of America because Americans are stuck in the past. They are stuck in the Cold War era of the 1960s and 70s, and they have not fast forwarded. So as a result, the American public is in some ways like the Pakistanis. Okay, the Pakistanis are consumed by a hatred of India, a hatred of Hindus. Similarly, Americans have been brainwashed from school all the way in the media, in their colleges, everything, that Russia is an evil empire and America is the force for good and we have to take them on. And this is the mindset that propels all of this anti-Russia propaganda and the start of the Ukraine-Russia war. That's number one. And then number two, as far as the United States is concerned, the military-industrial complex became irrelevant for all practical purposes after the Soviet Union dissolved. Right? Who was America going to fight with? Nobody. So America had to invent new wars, and it invented several wars after that, invaded totally defenseless countries, including Grenada, okay, such a small country that was bombed by the United States. And now it's targeting Russia because this way it can up the ante and then it can generate more wealth for the military-industrial complex. So this is the very first observation I want to make. So every time Americans take a holier-than-thou approach and say, oh, India is paying for the Russia-Ukraine war. India is subsidizing Russia-Ukraine war. Respond back to them. India has got nothing to do with the Russia-Ukraine war. India will buy oil from anywhere in the world to drive its economy. However, this war was invented by, commissioned by, sustained by, and aggravated by only one nation, the United States of America, where both are guilty. The Democrats and Republicans are both guilty, except Trump did not increase the scale of the war in his first term, but his second term has been obviously worse. Now, second point that Lutnick made was US is the largest consumer.
Just come in for a second. In fact, yeah. I believe that genuinely Trump wants to stop the war, any war. But the problem is he's being played by very seasoned politicians. And that's where the problem is. I mean, he genuinely wants to stop the war. You can see the concern in his statement when he says 7,000 people lost their lives in a needless war. That I think is coming from the heart. I don't deny him that.
Why if that is
geopolitics works in a different way. So go ahead.
If that is really the case, then why is he not stopping the Israel-Gaza war? Because more people have died there than in Ukraine. Okay, and at least Russia has taken extraordinary precaution not to target civilian infrastructure. There will be collateral damage in war, but they have not specifically targeted. That's not the case in Gaza. And of course, I'm a supporter of Israel. But just to respond to that point, if Trump is really a peace seeker, he wouldn't have done this. I think the truth behind all of his posturing is the following. Okay, number one is obviously, Jeffries pointed out day before yesterday that Trump family fortune on paper have increased by $5 billion as a result of the crypto deal with Pakistan. So, and then the second thing is, like all the previous Russian administrations, Trump also uses Pakistan as you know as a card to
Yeah.
destabilize South Asia, to destabilize Central Asia, and particularly target Russia. Okay, and then there were rumors that when the strike on the Iranian reactors was carried out, the American jets took off from Pakistani soil. Okay, not confirmed, but that's what a lot of defense experts have said. Okay, so what is really motivating Trump? I don't think he's interested in peace. I think it is something more sinister and which is going to be more disastrous. Okay, I think here are the following. Number one, Trump is obsessed with winning the Nobel Prize. Okay, and then he claimed that he will stop the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours, Gaza-Israel war in no time. None of that happened, right? It has been 6 months and none of that has happened. And when India launched Operation Sindoor, he attempted to take credit. But why? That brings us to the second reason. The reason was India not only struck 9 terror bases, it also struck 11 plus 2, 13 air bases in Pakistan, nuclear weapons storage facilities, took out its AWACS, most importantly, took down every single projectile that was hurled at India, and none of the installations in India were hit. By contrast, Pakistan lost its jet fighters, including F-16s, including JF-17s. They lost their AWACS. They lost the planes that parked inside the bunkers, and then they lost, they also lost the command center in Jacobabad, Noor Khan, and other places. And this really rattled Trump because many of these facilities were secured by the Americans, and some of the air bases are even guarded by the US Marines, so that even Pakistan Air Force pilots have to go through a separate entrance and frisked by the US Marines. So this, to a very large extent, rattled the military-industrial complex of the US. And then the pressure came on Trump to immediately act. That's why on the 7th, J.D. Vance has said, look, this is a war between India and Pakistan, none of our issue. Within 24 hours, Trump came screaming. Okay, he said, stop the war, stop the war. Okay, the reason was India had taken out crucial American guarded assets in Pakistan, and that rattled the United States. And what rattled the US, in particular Trump, was something even more, which is India brought down 2 of the Shaheen missiles. Okay, one over the Hisar region, okay, over Haryana, and the other just on the India-Pakistan border. And these missiles travel at 3 or 4 Mach per hour, 3 or 4 Mach speed. And then to take them out requires.
I thought these were. From something about from China. I thought these are missiles from China. Yeah.
The missiles are from China, but then the earlier comment I was making about being guarded by the American defense systems is some of their bases are guarded by US defense systems, and it is also rumored, and they're also being told by several generals that many American engineers and military personnel are also deployed in these locations. Okay, so now coming to this, India.
How come no body bag count has come up so far?
Some estimates have come out, but then the DGMO has made it very clear, and also the Air Marshal in a recent interview made it very clear that we don't confirm the body counts or the equipment loss of the enemy. Okay, but he gave some hint. At least 5 of their aircraft were shot down in the air, and then he left it at that. Okay, so some of that count has come from the Pakistanis themselves, because I think they have recognized something like 25 or 30 of their personnel killed, and about 150 have been already listed as dead. But the real number would be closer to 600 or 700 at the minimum. Okay, probably a lot more than that. Okay, so but coming back to this point, that India could take down the ballistic missiles hurled at that too in such a short distance, rattled the United States. Because look at the implication of this. If this can be done, these missiles can travel within a matter of minutes. And if India can do that, that shows India's indigenous technology has grown by leaps and bounds just in the last 2 to 3 years, thanks to the phenomenal effort led by Prime Minister Modi, as well as by institutions like the IIT Madras, as well as the private sector, which jumped in and did a phenomenally good job, which no other country in the world can match. Okay, because remember, India was the first country in the world to strike nuclear weapon storage in Kirana Hills and Chagai Hills. No other country had done it before that. And only 2 months later, the US and Israel collaborated to strike a similar facility in Iran, but that was not as extensive as what India did. And probably the know-how went from India because there were rumors the Israeli scientists were working closely with the Indians at the time of the strike on Kirana and the Chagai Hills. This number one. So these are the first two reasons, right? Number one reason is Trump's obsession with winning the Nobel Prize, and India said no. Prime Minister Modi came to the parliament and announced that no, nobody else had a role to play in this, and India ended the war and declared ceasefire on its own because Pakistan came to us and begged. And it was, I can very easily relate to that, because what is the point of dragging on the war after you have struck 13 of the air bases and 2 of the nuclear sites and 11 terror sites and taken down the critical infrastructure and demonstrated that they can do no harm to India, whereas India can take out their most critical assets. Why would you want to continue that war beyond that point? Because that would then destroy the Indian economy. So India stopped on its own terms. And that upsets Trump because Trump wanted to steal the credit for that and India did not give it. Okay, these are the first two reasons why Trump is obsessed with this tariff. Third reason is he thought, like in Tamil we say, right, குழந்தையின் கேள்வி விட்டுட்டு தொட்டிலையும் ஆட்டுறது. That is like, you go and pinch the child first and the child screams, then you rock the cradle. Okay, then the child calms down. So he thought he will use India as a card to impose tariffs to threaten Russia. Look, you cannot sell your oil. If you don't sell your oil, crude, then you won't be able to generate revenue and you will lose the war. No, that's not how Russia works. Okay, so Russia has fought wars from much weaker positions in the past over the last 100 years, and it can continue to fight, and it is actually winning in Ukraine hands down. Okay, there is not much of Ukraine left. About 30% of the territory has been lost already. Okay, so but Trump thought he will use this to bring Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table. However, the idea was not to force Putin. The idea was to bail the United States and Trump out of this Ukraine-Russia war. Why? Because Putin made it very clear. Number one, this is not going to stop. He even refused to offer a ceasefire. Do you recall that? He said, no ceasefire, we'll straight away get to a peace treaty whenever it happens. Okay, that's number one. And Trump had to eat the humble pie. Okay, he couldn't do anything about it. And he came out and declared, hey, victory, victory. Putin punched me. Okay, he knocked me down. Okay, and then I got up after 10 seconds. Okay, and I'm still disoriented, but I'm the winner of the round. Okay, so he came out and said, hey, we don't want all the ceasefire, we want peace treaty. Okay, so that is like, getting beaten and then pretending that he has won. Okay, and then Putin made it absolutely clear that he's not going to talk to Zelensky. Okay, he has made it absolutely clear, not only there, but also in the recent interview he gave in the SEO summit, on the sidelines of the SEO summit. He said, according to the Ukrainian constitution, there is no way to extend Zelensky's term, and he is there without any authority. So we are not going to talk to him. Okay, he made it clear to Trump in Alaska as well. Okay, and third, he made it very clear, no NATO membership for Ukraine. And four is to completely demilitarize and make it a buffer zone so that Russian interests are not threatened. Okay, and Trump knew very well there is nothing you can do about this, and then he wanted to back out of that, and he said, now the ball is in Europe's court, and it's between Europe and Russia. Okay, so he's basically trying to run out of that. He created the chaos. Rather, America created the chaos for 30 years, and now he wanted to pass the baton to the Europeans so that they will face the repercussions. So this is the third reason. Okay, the first reason is obsession, Nobel Prize, and then the second reason was to force Russia to come to the negotiating table, but that was mainly to bail out of the Russia-Ukraine war, where America doesn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, what was the third reason I mentioned? I forgot. Anyway, we'll come back. Okay, so then the next reason is oil. Okay, so Trump has been hoping, and this has been a long-term dream of many Republicans, drill baby drill, and we will export oil from the United States to the rest of the world, and hence we'll curb the ability of others to sell oil. And effectively, America wanted to drive a shortage around the world. Okay, basic reason, you cannot extract shale oil for anything less than, I believe, $50 a barrel. Okay, that's the cost of extraction. And then on top of that, you have to add the profit margin, operating cost, then
Yeah.
Right. Right. And then you have to ship it around the world. And I don't know how you will overcome all the constraints around shipping containers, all the logistics, 3PL and everything. Okay, that's a separate story. But that's where the evil design comes into play, because that will trigger, let's say, Russian oil is blockaded. Then that will cause a significant shortfall in the energy requirements around the world. Okay, demand around the world. Sorry, the supply around the world. The demand is not going to come down. The supply will drop significantly by as much as 30 to 40% if that happens. Okay, because India is the largest refiner of petroleum products in the world, and then if India is impose secondary sanctions, it's not only going to impact India, it's going to impact multiple countries around the world, including Europe, Africa, and Asia. Okay? So when this happens, Trump is thinking in the most evil manner, this will drive the barrel prices up. Okay, it may go well above, who knows, 120, 130, $150 a barrel. And then in the process, there will be huge shortfall of supply. And Trump and his cronies, the oil incorporated, the oil lobby, can export oil from the US, because now you are going to only sell 70% of the world's demand and you can make a huge killing out of that. Okay, that is the next game plan Trump was having, which is plain evil. And I think that's one of the things which is driving all of these maneuvers of Donald Trump. Okay, so this apart, what is the fourth one? This is not something too many people have talked about, but I think only one person has talked about this in detail, which is 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Pathak. Okay, so 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Pathak, in a recent interview, I think it was on Gunner's Shot with General Ravi Shankar. So she makes a very important observation, that she brings up the example of G2, okay, the group of two, which was originally invented by Barack Obama, okay, more than 15, 16 years ago. Obama wanted to create what he called the group of two, United States and China. Okay, so the two will form an alliance, and the US, if you all think of it, doesn't have a huge presence in Asia at all. Okay, how many US products do we consume? Okay, and not even in military, right? Even military products of US are not that much imported and consumed in Asia, and US doesn't have a real footprint in Asia, whereas China has, and the US has a real footprint in a lot of other parts of the world, including Europe, including some parts of Africa, but many parts of South America, where China doesn't have a big presence. It has some token presence, but it does not have a huge footprint. So the plan of Obama's was that G2, which is an alliance between the United States and China, will be similar to what the Axis powers, Japan and Germany, formed in the Second World War. Okay, so Germany was committing a lot of terrible atrocities in Europe, where Japan had no footprint, and Japan was committing a lot of terrible atrocities in China and Asia and Southeast Asia and everywhere, where Germany had no footprint. And the two of them forming an alliance made sense, at least in their deranged minds, that they said, you know, the two of us will take on our common enemies, which is the allied forces, okay, of UK, US and everywhere on various fronts. And that way, we'll keep them engaged, we'll disperse them, and then we'll take on them. That was this logic behind Germany and Japan coming together, because their loots came from two different terrains. Similarly, today the US and China are operating in overlapping realms, and hence one of the plans of Barack Obama was to create G2, which means these two countries can now choke the necks of every other country in the world as not only the two biggest economies, two biggest military powers, but also the two biggest trading partners who can set the terms and conditions for the rest of the world. And 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Pathak highlights this and says this is a probable game plan which we should not ignore. Okay, I think these are the various factors which is driving this behavior. And then while talking about this, let's talk a little bit about the dollar, right? So because whenever we are talking about tariffs, imports, and imbalance, okay, we are always focusing on only one thing, right? So, or rather, Trump focuses only on one thing. Trump says there is a huge trade imbalance. Okay, so I am only exporting this much, but I'm importing so much from you. Okay, but there is another side to trade, to tariffs. Okay, there are two sides to trade. One is tariff. Okay, the other side is the trading currency, the US dollars. Okay. So most of us have read about, heard about sweatshops, okay, run in countries starting from Bangladesh to Vietnam to, Egypt and every other place where American companies operate. Take an example like Lululemon, okay. How much do we buy those shirts for? Okay, I mean, this is Nike, and this costs maybe $45, $50, right? This shirt I'm wearing. Whereas if you have to buy something like Lululemon, that will cost you $200. Okay, so, but where are these made? These are made in Peru, these are made in India, these are made in, Vietnam and other places, and where the finished product is probably exported out of those countries for $5. Okay, and add another dollar for shipping, $6 or $7. And hence, in other words, by outsourcing this work to India and other third world countries, Americans are making a huge profit and a huge killing. Okay, so these are some of the other factors to keep in mind, because dollar being the trading currency and the default reserve currency compels other countries, developing nations like India, China, and everyone to export their products at dirt cheap prices. Okay, and then let the American corporations and American economy profiteer out of that. Okay, so this is one of the very important factors to keep in mind. And remember, 30 years ago in 1995, America's share, or the US dollar share of world reserve and world trade, was something like 85 to 90%. Now it is down to 55 to 60%. Okay, and if Trump thinks that, oh, since historically the world has depended on on US dollars, and the US dollar is no longer linked to gold reserve, we can still continue to flex the muscle. He's being stupid. Okay, that's the reason why he should be nominated for Darwin Award, and he should be given that award. Okay, not the Nobel Peace Prize, which anyway he won't win, but Darwin Award he something deserves, simply because look at the math, right? Look at the sloping curve. It was 85 to 90% 30 years ago. Now it's down to 55 to 60%. Okay, and with the bilateral trade increasing among all of these countries, for example, India and Russia, okay, and then India and Brazil, India, China, and China has now come out, right, very openly. And of course, that will always be a transactional relationship. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But with all of these things happening, India need not dance to the tune of the consumer, okay? Because the consumer is not, the consumer here is the United States of America. I'm going back to the statement Lutnick made, okay? So we don't have to, because we are doing a favor. Indians, the Vietnamese, they all should be saying this. We are doing America a favor by retaining the US dollar as the reserve currency, as the trading currency, but also exporting. Just give me 1 second. Let me finish one more trail of thought and I'll be back to you. Okay? So, hence, we are exporting everything dirt cheap. You are profiteering at our expense. Okay, so the products are cheap in the US only because we are selling it cheap in search of US dollars, not otherwise. Okay, so the US is not doing any favor whatsoever, okay, by importing goods from other countries. Okay, and then the second thing to remember on this point is everybody talks of, look, we are a consuming economy, okay, but there has to be a balance between what you manufacture and consume versus what you import and consume. Okay, so for example, India is not an import or export dependent economy. Only a small fraction of Indian export is, for example, dependent on the US, right? Out of all of this trade, even though India has about $130 billion worth of trade in the United States, US cannot do much about most of those things. It cannot impose any tariff on pharmaceuticals, then the prices will go up. Okay, it cannot impose tariffs on IT services, then those prices will go up. Okay, so it cannot do much on it. But what it will, I think, impact is maybe $30 to $40 billion of impact, and India can refactor. It will have some temporary import. For example, government exports out of Tirupur and places like that will take some temporary hit, but India can absorb that and work better. But the most important point I wanted to make here, okay, is the conversation that happens in the US media and even Indian media. Bring back the jobs to the US, okay? So what are they talking about? They're talking about manufacturing jobs. They are talking about all the IT jobs, all the business process outsourcing jobs, okay? Let us make one thing very clear. These jobs were not ever American jobs. These jobs are not invented in the United States of America. This economy was not invented in the United States of America. This outsourcing economy, this scaling up of manufacturing, this outsourcing of IT services, and building all of these things to massive scale was all done outside of the US, particularly in India and China. Okay, India and China, when it comes to manufacturing, China is probably a good 40 to 45 years ahead of the United States. Okay, who is going to run the American factories here if you want to bring the jobs back from China? And Chinese work 996. Okay, no American is going to do that. Okay, so Americans are not productive. Americans are expensive. Americans don't have the skills to bring back the manufacturing jobs. Take IT jobs. Okay, take business process jobs. These jobs and the processes were almost exclusively built by the Indians in India. And India has built nearly 30 years of massive infrastructure, scale, training, and everything. But even more importantly, who are the people who are working in these BPO centers and others, right? These are Indians, young Indians, girls and boys, who come from tier 2, tier 3 towns of India, right? Small towns, where they have never spoken English while in school, at home, or even in college. Okay, they may study in English medium, but they never speak in English. Okay, except on rare occasions. But then they join these call centers. They pick up English. They pick up accent. We can make fun of it for all we want. We can say that's a fake American accent, fake British accent, and all that. I'll challenge any American or any Brit or any Canadian or Australian to learn any Indian language in 6 months and run a call center and speak even with a fake Indian accent. You cannot do that. Indians can do that. And Indians are the only people who can do that, because otherwise other countries like China would have done this. Okay, why is China not a big outsourcing center for IT business process? This is the reason. Indians have the skill on this, the ability to learn, the ability to be humble, because these kids come from tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns in Odisha, from Tamil Nadu and Jharkhand and other places. They learn business processes, they learn domain, they learn technology, they learn to humbly interact with the American customers, and they drive the show. So this is not a skill. Trump can dream of stealing all these things that India and China invented and developed and scaled up and claim, hey, all of these things are now mine. Okay, I'm bringing it back to us. No, you are not bringing it back to you. You are trying to steal, but even if you steal, okay, so, in Tamil, we have a proverb, right? So you hand a coconut over to a dog. What can it do with it? It cannot break it and it cannot eat it, okay? And it doesn't know what to do with it. So it will be just pouncing on it and, it will be kicking it around and not know what to do with it, okay? So let's pretend for a moment, okay? Take a cloud computing center operating out of India, okay? We all know how critical it is, right? So, you have to tune, you have to optimize everything, and you have to make sure that the cost of services are not going up. I'm talking about the cloud services like Databricks and other things. They're not going up, and you have to control a lot of these parameters. You have to have team members who, like, technology changes like what? Every 15 days, every 30 days, right? So just look at the new apps, the new products that are getting launched. Indians learn that. Americans are incapable of learning all these things on their own. And if you bring back those jobs and hand it over to the Americans, it's like handing a coconut to a dog, and the dog won't know what to do with it. Okay, so America and the Western world needs India and China more than we need it. You know why? For the simple reason, a much weaker India in 1998 could withstand American sanctions. Much stronger India today can and will, but America cannot, because if your global dominance with the US dollar reserve and trading currency has come down from 85 to 90% 30 years ago to 55 to 60% today, you are looking at a downward spiral. And the day it happens, the US is sitting on a debt of $37 trillion, and that increases by $1 trillion every 100 days, according to Elon Musk. And I think it's correct. So the day the US dollar stops being the trading currency, the American economy will take a solid beating and may even go into recession. And this is not a hyperbolic statement, because already Germany is third year into recession, right? That chancellor has made it very clear, third year into recession. And France and UK are now looking at recession, and they're talking to IMF, okay? And already Hungary and Greece are having negotiations to join BRICS. And there are rumors that Macron of France has evinced very similar interests. So we are looking at a shifting global landscape, but this does not mean that everything is going to be rosy for India, because we already talked about $30 to $40 billion of export that will be immediately hit. It's also possible that Trump may add additional sanctions to India. But जैसे हम कहते हैं in India, once the water flows above your head, what difference does it make, right? When it is, whether it's flowing 1 foot above or a meter above. Okay, so once we are looking at 25 to 50% tariff, that stage itself, the game is over, because the operating margin for most of the publicly listed companies is roughly around that, right? Like 23, 24%, sometimes even less than that, 18, 19%. So none of these companies will be able to declare dividends for their shareholders. They won't be able to drive their stock prices up. So they won't be too interested in this. They will look for alternative markets. Okay, but India will be impacted in the short term. But India can find alternatives, can outlive this, and then we'll talk a little bit about the BRICS alliance, or especially the RIC alliance. But I said a lot. I'll pause here. Back to you, Sher. I think you had a question in between.
Yes, indeed. And I just wanted to tell our viewers that 2 monologues I've done in the last 24 hours. One is on tariffs, and one is on the United States, is US weaponizing the dollar. Take a look at that, because a lot of data is shared in these 2 monologues. Also, viewers, there is a real problem affecting the United States today. This is not even tariff related. It is the paucity of medical medicines. Medicines are not being made available. This has been going on for 6 to 9 months now. I mean, even from before Trump's time, there has been a steady shortfall of regular medicines that people take like every day. Those of us, who have, as we grow older, we have to have this for this, this for this. You get the idea, right? Even these are becoming scarce. And I have not been able to figure out why that is happening. And therefore, on the one side, you have the tariff problem. On the other side, shortages are getting created, because this is not going to bode well for the populace, because that's going to make this nation more sick. People are living longer, but you're going to be, sicker. That means it's going to drive up medical insurances, costs for the individual user. So average American is screaming in pain. It's not showing up yet. But the problem I see with this whole thing is the United States government is trying to make the non-resident Indian as the target here. I'm afraid this is not going to work. The Indian Americans are 1% or 1.2% of the US population. They contribute to 6% of the tax base. They are like, I think, 14% of Fortune 500 CEOs. I mean, they put their... Yeah, go ahead. Play this thing, please.
A lot of the MAGA people in recent months have been saying some really harsh things about Indian Americans. We don't want them immigrating here. We don't want them as competitors. Well, if you're prepared to make enemies of the Indian American community, then obviously you have to get out of the people-to-people business of relationships with the state of India back home.
Yes.
And so I think that's one thing that's going on. That MAGA is very much a domestic form. It's very much about domestic bigotry, and that crimps your ability to be great in the world. But it's also an expression of American defeat and resignation. The people behind MAGA are people who are not optimistic about the future of the United States. MAGA is strongest where American technological development is weakest, where America is least competitive. MAGA gets its votes and the people who are losing in global competition, not the people who are winning. And so they have a view of America's place in the world, which is basically, look, if we can...
All right. Let me make a very simple statement on that, right? So number one, I think there is a small section of Americans, probably from the MAGA side, who are anti-NRIs, okay, Indian Americans. But we should remember, this is not the first time that fringe voices like this have come out. Even in 2008, 2012, etc., when there was an economic downturn, or even in 2001, 2001 was not as loud, but 8 and 12 were in fact quite loud. When a lot of local Americans are losing their jobs, and those jobs are getting outsourced, some anti-Indian sentiments were expressed. Okay, but I don't read too much into that, because I don't think America, that is reflective of America as a society. That's number one. Who knows what will happen in the future? Okay, if this kind of global realignment happens, anti-Indian sentiment in America can rise, and that can impact us in the future. But I don't think that's happening right now. But more importantly, this is my simple statement, right? White people in America need quotas to get into colleges and get jobs. We Indians and Chinese don't. Okay. If you have meritocracy, you'll be kicking your ass every single time. Okay. When was it last that you came across a school or a college or anywhere where an Indian or Chinese was not the topper? Or you take the top 10 ranks in a school, in a classroom, will be overwhelmingly Indian, Chinese, and not white or black or Hispanic or anything. Okay. So you feel free to hate the best and the brightest intelligent people in society. I'm talking about the United States of America. The best, the brightest, and the most intelligent are the Indians and Chinese. Okay. Both in terms of their intelligence, their IQ, their accomplishment, and their culture, their emphasis on family, their willingness to hard work, willingness to work hard. These are universally recognized by everyone. That's why a third of the startups in the Silicon Valley are started up by Indians. Almost 70% of the engineers, 80% of the engineers are either Indians or Chinese. Okay. Feel free to hate all of us if you want, but remember one thing. Many of us were not here in the United States. I have been here for 26 years. And, many of us, until it was 1965 or something, Indian immigration to the US was banned, right? So Indians were not allowed to come to the US.
Only Caucasians were allowed. Only Caucasians were allowed.
Only Caucasians are allowed, right? Only white people are allowed. Indians are not allowed. Okay. So let's take a very hypothetical scenario that tomorrow anti-Indian hate really manifests across the US, and then we all face the heat. What will happen? Okay. Yeah, there will be a temporary shock. Okay. There will be a temporary rebalancing, but all of that will happen. And let's say we are all kicked out. We go back to India or to whichever country is willing to absorb us. What will happen? Look at Japan. Japan has now asked for Indian help to import 500,000 Indian techies into Japan, right? Because Japan is facing a population crisis in the sense, their population is shrinking, okay? And then their economy is hitting stagflation. So they need Indians to come in and innovate for them. They want us, okay? Israel wants us, okay? Russians want us. So many other countries will want us, okay? And India itself will benefit from the Indians going back. So I don't think such a scenario will arise, okay? And I don't see signs of that arising because all these voices of, expressions against Indian Americans have been heard from the fringe elements even in 2008, 2012, etc. So it's nothing new. But should that really happen, okay, America would be the biggest loser because Indians, if we can come to the United States and in your classrooms, we can beat you hands down, okay? And let's not pretend otherwise, okay? If you have a math Olympiad, it's going to be Indian and Chinese kids winning it and not white kids, not black kids, not Hispanic kids. Face it very clearly, okay? And if it is programming competition, it will be Indians and Chinese once again winning it, and Koreans and others, and Japanese, okay? And not Americans, okay? And not only that, we can do all of that with very minimal resources. And we don't depend on government handouts. We don't need institutions. We invest in the family, okay? If Trump and his lackeys want to take this route, be our guest. That will justify why Trump should be nominated for the Darwin Award 2025, because he would be bringing about the long-term death and destruction of the United States. And to borrow Edward Gibbon's phrase, Edward Gibbon was an American historian, a very famous one, who wrote the book, The Decline and the Fall of the Roman Civilization. Same thing will happen to the United States. The decline and the fall of the United States has started with Donald Trump. And that's precisely the reason he deserves the Darwin Award 2025. Not the Nobel Prize, because so many people have won it, but it takes a unique person with an extraordinary level of stupidity and self-deceit and truancy and other things to bring down the most powerful nation and then lead it on a path of self-destruction. So Trump, you deserve the Darwin Award 2025. Back to you, 𝗖𝗍.
Thank you so much. And we still have a little bit of the Lutnick interview left. The reason why we are going back again and again to that is because nobody is rebutting point by point. That is what we are trying to do. We are Americans. We are American citizens. We wish the best for America as well as for India. Nothing wrong in that. Many Americans are dual, even multiple country citizens. You are unnecessarily taking aim at somebody because they won't want to play ball according to your routes. And there is, like you said, we can add another three or four reasons why Trump is behaving the way he is behaving. But unfortunately, this is undoing a lot of good work that has been done over the past few decades. And that is needless, in my opinion. And, let's wait and see where things fall. I can tell you, American companies are continuing to hire in India. Those are still continuing to grow. If you are going to shut out H-1Bs and not allow Indian students to come and work here in the United States, guess what? They'll start doing the same jobs in the country of India, and then what happens is you will suddenly see no jobs being created in the US at all. See, this is a problem that balance has to be done in a right way. Anyway, let's finish this Lutnick interview. We have about a minute or so, and then maybe one more round, and then we can wrap it up.
Aligned both with President Trump as well as Modi, and a sense that there isn't really a coming together. In fact, that meeting with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and the Prime Minister Modi seemed to indicate a coalescing of the BRICS. Do you see anywhere in the next month, 2 months, any type of deal or backing down to a lower rate with India?
I would expect, like you saw it in Canada, right? The Carney got elected with this term elbows up, meaning let's fight with America. They put on retaliatory tariffs. They were all bravado. And what happened? Their GDP negative 1.6%, unemployment rocketing towards 8%. And what did Carney just do? He just finally dropped his retaliatory tariffs. So I think what happens is it's all bravado because you think it feels good to fight with the biggest client in the world. But eventually, your businesses are going to say, you've got to stop this and go make your deal with America. So I think, yes, in a month or 2 months, I think India is going to be at the table and they're going to say they're sorry and they're going to try to make a deal with Donald Trump. And it will be on Donald Trump's desk how he wants to deal with Modi. And we leave that to him. That's why he's the president.
Let me say a couple of things here. Okay, Canadian economy may be shrinking. Indian economy is not, growing at 7.8%. And look at all the latest reports that have come out and contrast that with the Modi's report, which is actually downgrading the US economy. So it's not India which is crawling. It's the US which is crawling and coming to a near slow grind. So this is number one. And then number two, trust. Trust is one word which should define any relationship, personal or international or anything. Okay, it's not just a transactional relationship, but it's trust at some level, right? So Russia, Japan, and Israel have always been trusted allies of India. They have always stood by India, and they have stood for the right thing. Contrast this with the United States. So the US, on the other hand, has never been a trustworthy ally of anyone, not of India, not of any other country. And I'm saying this as an American citizen. So, because at the end of the day, if you cannot generate trust, if nobody is trusting you, but they're only fearing you, that submission they display will only last as long as they fear. And why would they fear? They would fear out of two reasons, right? Number one, the military prowess of the United States, and number two, the impact antagonism with the US will have on their own economies and hence their ability to get re-elected. Now look at the world. None of the European leaders who fell at the feet of Trump and submitted is going to get re-elected. Am I correct? If the elections are held in Europe today and all of the countries will effectively elect right-wing governments and kick out all the prime ministers, presidents who fell at the feet of Trump. This is number one. And number two, while so many countries have come and said, hey, we will agree to your terms and conditions, not one of them have signed or ratified the treaty with the United States of America. Okay, this is a point that General Rajiv Narayanan keeps highlighting time and again. So for a treaty to be signed, it has to be ratified by 2/3 of majority in every government as well as in Congress. Okay, so not one country has ratified it. And think of it, right? So for example, Trump wants Japan to invest $550 billion in the US and has the audacity to claim the US will take 90% of the profit. Okay, ये तो पूरा दुनिया में कहीं नहीं चलता है. Okay, if I say, hey, I will come and invest in your town, but then Joe Mayor of your town, he will walk away with 90% of profit, and I have to absorb all the loss, everything. Doesn't work. Okay, so what did Japan do? When Prime Minister Modi went to Japan, okay, Japan pulled out its trade delegation with the US, right? Initially, it said, hey, the Japanese Prime Minister said, okay, we will agree to the trade deal, knowing fully well that the Japanese parliament will reject it. Okay, so he doesn't stand to lose anything to Trump. Okay, he just buys time. But after Modi went there, spent 2 days, Japanese delegation was halted to the United States. So they are not even discussing trade. So for all this bravado displayed by Lutnick, okay, so the Indian economy is growing, it's not shrinking, okay, and then Indians have taken more serious punches in the past, and we have come out stronger, and then Indians will come out stronger this time too. And then the most critical thing is the trust, which the Trump administration destroyed. At the end of the day, even for very small things, right? You want to buy a phone worth $10,000 or $15,000, you check for ratings. What are you checking? Is it having 4.5, 4.6 out of 5? And you're checking that because whether you can trust that brand. Okay. And forget buying a $12,000, $15,000 phone, rupees phone in India, or an iPhone costing ₹1,00,000 in India. But even a small thing, right? You go to a restaurant and then you eat for 200, 300 rupees. You still look for ratings, and that's how you order, because trust is hardest to earn. This is something even a small family-owned business, or even a small flower seller, okay, the pawnwala, who's selling at the corner of the street, he understands this very well. That's why he opens the shop exactly at the same time every day. And then, he makes sure that, he is keeping you happy as a customer. He does all these things. So trust takes a long time to build, and it takes a very short time to destroy it. And what Trump has done is to destroy the trust which the Indians and Americans built over the last 20, 25 years. And in particular, the tech sector built in collaboration with India. Okay, so Trump has very successfully destroyed it, and India is not going to crawl. Okay, a country that's on the ascendancy doesn't crawl. However, there is one danger that India should be prepared to face, which is the traitors like Rahul Gandhi, okay, M.K. Stalin, and a whole bunch of others. Okay, so they are already dancing to the tune of Trump. Whatever Trump says, they are echoing. Okay, and they are even amplifying and disseminating the US deep state propaganda. Okay, that's what M.K. Stalin did in Europe this week. So these fellows will create a lot of ruckus within India. Okay, so this fifth column, including part of the media, is what we should be very concerned about, and we should act on it. And that's going to be the biggest challenge to deal with, because we saw the Maratha protest in Mumbai. It was called out at the last minute, but then the government had to make a concession for 10% reservation. So these kind of problems will continue to happen in India, and that's unfortunate pain that India has to go through. But this is a short-term pain for India, and India can and will come out of that. And then India can form an alliance, a trusting alliance with Russia and Japan, which has already formed, and with Israel, which already has. And then with China, it's always going to be transactional, but China is also facing stagflation. Okay, and then even if Trump is aspiring for G2, China won't. Okay, because if China had been willing, it would have responded and reciprocated Barack Obama's gesture back 15 years ago. It did not. Okay, because it has aspirations for global dominance, and it does not stand to gain a lot from collaborating with the US, because that would mean it sheds its relationship with Russia and with others, which China won't. Okay, so because China needs all of those things to have its grip on the rest of the world, and it won't. So America is not going to really gain a lot out of all the stupidity and bravado that Trump and his henchmen have indulged in, but it will stand to lose in the long term quite a lot. Okay, because this loss of trust, okay, starting from clamping down on Russia using SWIFT 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, now issuing the same threat to everybody, including countries like India, okay, is not going to augur well for America's future. And that's actually not even going to augur well for the future of American companies. And if you look at it, companies like Microsoft are already talking of shifting their base to UAE and others. That could be their corporate headquarters, but with bulk of the work done out of India. Okay, it can actually come back to bite the United States of America very hard in the long term, if not in the immediate short term. But even the immediate short term, who knows? Because Russia withheld the October-November magnet exports to the US. Okay, so if they were to expand the theater of denials, okay, Russia, China, and even India, if they were to selectively take out some of the export items, then America is going to experience tariff Christmas this December. Okay, and that is the time when the inflation will be at the peak, and that's the time when the goods will be in short supply. Okay, because even the chocolates and even the Christmas gifts you're handing out to everyone, they come from China. Okay, and then I know personally that a lot of the trinkets, the Christian trinkets, right, like from the cross and the other things they are wearing, a lot of things actually comes from India. Okay, people don't know that. Okay, so and with all of these things, thank you, Trump, okay, for introducing tariff Christmas, and that means his own support base, the women who voted for him, the conservative women, the mega women, they'll be paying 2x, 3x the price come December, and the tariff Christmas will be signaling the crucifixion of Jesus. Sorry, crucifixion of Trump, not Jesus. Okay, that one was a crucifixion. CRUCI-FICTAON. This will be a real crucifixion. FIXION. Okay, so I won't even be surprised if things go really out of control. You know, conversations about Article 25 and the impeachment of Trump and all those things start to happen, because already J.D. Vance is not, if you have noticed, he's not openly, amplifying Trump's, raucous and boisterous claims. And in fact, he's trying to play it down, and he's maintaining a very close rapport with Elon Musk. Okay. And that is, Musk has quite openly said that, Trump should be impeached and Vance should take over. And Vance also made a very cryptic statement that he's ready to take over as president should something untoward happen. So at least that is a gossip in the wine that Trump may get impeached, but it has hit a certain threshold that will be some of the critical exports being stopped to the United States, and tariff Christmas will, I think, trigger those things.
There has been rumors that Peter Thiel is the godfather of J.D. Vance, and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk work together in PayPal, at least that company, if not more. So there are some back channel connects here. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes. Kalavai, we wanted to do it half an hour. It's taken much more than that. I think we'll skip questions for today. I just want one update from our editor. Yesterday, the US and Japan deal was signed. However, it is still not ratified by Diet, the Parliament of Japan. What the deal is that Tokyo has agreed to invest $550 billion in projects selected by the US government and ramping up purchases of American agricultural products. Washington will apply a baseline 15% tariff on nearly all Japanese imports, along with separate sector-specific levies. And this needs to be ratified by Japanese Diet. I don't know, they might even be able to lobby there. But they are also saying, analysts at Eurasia Group are suggesting that Ishiba was unlikely to survive a challenge from within his own party on Monday. 2 days from now. So wait and see what happens.
I don't think he'll get ratified in the Japanese parliament or in any parliament. But the agriculture product statement you made is a very important one. So the US wants Japan to import rice from the US. Okay, so Japan is a huge producer of rice. Why should they import it from the US? Okay, so but coming to agricultural and dairy products, I want to make two statements, right? So India is absolutely correct, and the rest of the world should take the same stance of saying no to American agricultural and dairy products and even American meat, okay? Because all of these things are genetically engineered and with chemicals that are banned in Europe, right? Most of the American products are not even allowed in Europe. Like, for example, take the breakfast cereal, okay, which are fed the kids in America, okay? They have all these different colors, right? Like, what do you call it? Like Cheerios and all that. You have different colors, okay, that is to attract the children. Okay, they all use chemicals which are all completely banned in Europe. Okay, so no genetically modified food, no genetically engineered food, no chemical food. Okay, the rest of the world should absolutely say no to American agro products, meat products, and dairy products. However, before closing, I just want to make one observation to highlight a contrapoint, right? Which is 45% of Indian population is dependent on agriculture. Okay, and another 5% or 6% of population is dependent on dairy farming. That's more than half the population. That's one in every two persons is dependent on these two sectors which are least productive. Okay, and then this does not augur well for India's future, because who are the people that the likes of Stalin, Rahul Gandhi and others can get out on the street to protest? So these are the farmers and their likes who have nothing to do, right? Their days are not busy. They have not too many ambitions. Okay, they are just sitting all the time. There's a fallow season for 3 or 4 months. They won't have anything to do. Okay, so mostly sitting idle, work for a couple of hours a day, and then wait for the rain, wait for the next, wait. Okay, they are waiting. They are not living. Okay, so those people can wait either at their home, or they can come in, on the street and wait on the street for a 500 rupee biryani. Okay, so they will do that. So that is something India has to work on. Okay, which is to diversify our economy, make it more manufacturing driven, and modernize it. And Modi has done a phenomenal job over the last 11 years, but that has to be now accelerated. We shouldn't think of plans like, we'll wait for 10 years, 15 years. Some of that, why can't we do this in 6 months? Why can we not do this in 12 months, right? So even when you take dairy farming, for example, look at the number of cheeses we have in India, right? There's one well-known cheese which is universal in India, which is paneer. Okay, and then probably there are half a dozen cheeses coming from the Himalayan regions, but they are not well known across India, not widely consumed either. Okay, but even look at a small European country, they'll have 150 different types of cheeses. Okay, or take something like alcohol. Okay, prohibition. For some reason, strange reason that I cannot understand, a lot of Hindus, a lot of Indians, they agree with prohibition. Yeah, prohibition to hona chahiye. That should be prohibition. Okay, why? Hinduism is not against prohibition. Okay, if you take the Rig Veda, in the Rig Veda, on one occasion during the Soma Yajna, Indra consumes way too much of Soma and he falls sick. What is the medication given to him? What is the panacea given to him? The panacea given to him is Surabhanam, okay, which is alcohol. Okay, and then in subsequent stages of Hinduism, especially in the last 2000 years or so, slowly the consumption of alcohol by Brahmins was discouraged. But then there are 10 different types of alcoholic beverages that are discussed in various Hindu scriptures, including Dharma Shastras, which are allowed for everyone else other than the Brahmins. Okay, so India as a society is not a society for prohibition. Hindu culture is not a prohibition-centric culture. Instead, Hindu culture relishes all of these things like alcohol, wine, and other things, because Kalidasa writes about those things, right? When a woman, when the Nartaki has consumed wine, okay, and dances on the stage, her eyes shine like the wine she has consumed, okay? And then if you look at the Ramayana, you have similar descriptions, okay, of people indulging in wine and other things. So I think India should diversify. Okay, there are so many other countries which make alcohol. Okay, wine, for example, France makes it, US makes it, and then a lot of South American countries, Central Asian countries make that. India can very well import those things, branded ones at very good value for money. Because I checked out, right? Like take Tamil Nadu, for example, Tasmak sells moonshine, pitiable, worst kind of experience you can have. Last time I went there to check the prices, and they cost more than something like Old Number 7 or any of these whiskeys sold in the US in a classy shop, okay, where you can have the best of the experience. So prohibition only benefits the likes of Arvind Kejriwal, MK Stalin, and others. So open up this market. And second, that's the reason why you mentioned alcohol as an example. It's not only to keep the crooks like Stalin and others out of check, in check, but also more importantly, India need not have an antagonistic relationship with the US. Okay, for the simple reason, this is something General Ravi Shankar repeatedly highlights, and I want to close with this last statement. See, India and US tried to build an excellent relationship over the last 25 years after the 1998 fiasco. Okay, so, and it has had its share of success. Okay, the companies came and invested in India, and then Indians came to the US to study and work and all these things happened because a certain degree of trust was built and this was considered strategy. Okay. And we do not have to abandon all of those things emotionally only because of Trump. Instead, we should work towards defeating Trump and his agenda, and on the other hand, to build a more long-term strategic relationship with the US. So, for example, take something like wine, right? So, why not directly create a very simplified process by which an importer from India can import Napa Valley wines or Columbia River Valley wines. Okay, import those things. Do the same thing from South America. So you are now expanding your relationship with a lot of others. Do that with France. Okay, France has a surplus, I believe, last year. Not the left bank or the right bank. Those are expensive. Those are premium. Indians mostly cannot afford those. But there's rest of the wine coming from those places. When you do all of those things, one, what you do is you are taking on America where you ought to. But at the same time, there are areas where it is mutually beneficial for India to partner with them and do that. And never forget one thing. There are some critical areas of technology where the US is ahead, even China is ahead, and India is just catching up. Okay, one is artificial intelligence, second is quantum computing, third is CRISPR and other genetics, genome-based technologies. Okay, these are three areas where India is still lagging behind. India can catch up, India will catch up. There should be an absolutely meritocracy-driven plan to achieve these ends in the next 3 to 5 years, which is doable. But that's what we should focus on. Until that time, it is important to remember that Trump is not America, right? And Trump is an ephemeral phenomenon. Okay, he is there today. He is more likely to fail than succeed. And then when he fails, Trump and his legacy will be forgotten, will be destroyed, not by the rest of the world, by the Americans themselves. And in all probability, if tariff Christmas hits December 25, then you can forget J.D. Vance's chances in the future. Okay, and then not only that, there is also a possibility of Trump getting impeached.
Thank you so much, and a lot to churn here, viewers, and we will not be able to take questions, but you do want to get a copy of my new book, because if you saw what was on show in the recent parade that was on show in China, everything points to China's warfare prowess in sea, Navy. Chinese Navy is bigger than US now, and that's the place from where you can get the book. It's available in India in paperback form. Outside of India, it's available in ebook form. By the way, we have enhanced our viewer, much better to read now, especially on tablets and other iPad-like devices. Do use the latest versions of our app, 𝙒𝙗𝙧, and you will be able to get best experience, very, very similar to what you are going to see in Kindle. You can change fonts, you can change backdrops, you can change a lot of things, small, big, large. You can make the size bigger, anything that suits you. All that stuff is being provided. And do put in a review after you've read the book, good, bad, or ugly. It's not doesn't matter. We are in the process of evaluating what kind of an impact our books are creating in your minds and hearts. Thank you once again, Venkatji. We'll see you again very soon. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaste.